I have to say, I'm grateful to have two older sisters. In particular, when I was in middle school and high school, my sister made it clear, my sister Tina, that I should never wear white socks with black shoes. And seeing that all I wear is black now, I'm very appreciative that she had made that point when I was in high school. If you don't know why you shouldn't wear white socks with black shoes, you can ask an older sister. Another correction that kind of came recently, my sister, of course, she watches the live stream. She's like, brother, your beard's getting a little long. Like, okay. But it wasn't just her. Just a few weeks ago, I think you guys are getting more comfortable with me, which is great. I had a parishioner come up to me. I hope I don't embarrass them. But they're like, Father, can I tell you something? And I'm like, sure. And she's like, the beard has got to go. I was like, okay, I'm getting it. So I was talking and joking with our high school ministry, and of course they're preparing for their mission trip, and I was like, well, maybe I should donate my beard, not to science, but to the high school mission trip. And so I have an opportunity for those who don't like the beard to put your money where your mouth is. So if I raise $5,000 for the high school mission trip, I'll trim my beard. If we raise over $8,000 for the mission trip, I will clean shave it. And so it's an opportunity after Mass, if you so desire and not like my beard, you can get rid of my facial hair. But I have one caveat. Next Saturday is my installation. The bishop's coming. I'm going to have my beard. Every Wednesday night, I would go to Buffalo Wild Wings, grab some wings and a drink with another priest friend to start my day off. And so I was like, okay, Lord, I'll give you adult beverages. So I decided to offer it to the Lord. And Ash Wednesday came and had no problem, right? Thursday came, no problem. Friday came, no problem. Saturday, they had the St. Patrick's Parade in Elmhurst, which they actually just had this past weekend. And I'm Irish, like Carney is my last name. And so I was like, okay, after my 8 a.m. Mass, I went to, of course, the parade, got to spend time with the families. I wore my green so I didn't get pinched. And all of a sudden I ended up at a parishoner's house, and their first question to the priest is, Father, can I get you a drink? And I didn't even think twice. I'm like, yeah. And I was like, okay, went through the day. All of a sudden the night came. I, of course, had the evening Mass and confessions, and Father Chris asked, hey, you want to go out and grab a drink? I'm like, well, I can't drink. I gave it up for 4 days in, and I couldn't even fulfill that simple giving over to the Lord, right? And it's the reality of, well, my own forgetfulness, but then also maybe the difficulty that we can find, especially when we try to give things over to the Lord. Sometimes we fail. Yet, the Lord never stops calling. The Lord never stops calling us back to Him, right? And that's the beautiful thing about the story in our first reading, but at the beginning of the story of our first reading, and of course, the story of the apostles. So our first reading, we heard about Abram, which is, of course, Abraham. His name will be changed. And Abram, this is the beginning of the promise that God had given him. I will give you a great nation, a great name, and in a sense, a worldwide blessing. The nation came, of course, when the Israelites ended up into the Holy Land. The great name was the dynasty that was established under King David. And the worldwide blessing, of course, was then fulfilled under Christ. And so Abram got a great promise from the Lord. But the Lord asked two things from him. I want you to leave your homeland, which he did, but he also said, I want you to leave your kindred behind. Now, we didn't read it, but the next verse over, after he left his homeland, it said, Abram took Lot, his nephew, with him. In a way, it was actually, Lord, I trust you, but maybe just in case you don't provide an heir, I'm going to come up with a backup plan. In a certain sense, he failed to completely trust in the Lord, yet the Lord still called him. Abram then entered the land that the Lord had promised him, and then there was a famine. And instead of trusting that the Lord would provide for him in the famine, like he did later for Isaac, he went to Egypt. Lord, I trust you, but I'll help you on this one. I'm going to go to Egypt where there's food for me, right? And then he ends up in Egypt, and he says, well, this is not my wife, she's my sister, because he's afraid that Pharaoh would, of course, kill him and take his wife. Of course, you just see over and over again Abram failing. Yet the Lord remained faithful to him, continued to call him. He actually pulled him in chapter 15, Abram, trust me. I am your rock, I am your shield. And Abram would continue to fail. It's actually not till the end of his life where he offers the Lord everything, even his son Isaac, back to the Lord, that he is trusting enough to give the Lord everything. It gives hope in that story for me because there's hope that the Lord will continue to call me even in the midst of my failures, even in the midst of maybe forgetting about my Lenten penances, right? But it doesn't prevent me from then turning back to him and giving him my all or trying again. And so I just wanted to encourage you, if you've already failed at your Lenten promise, it's okay. Start again, right? Or if you haven't even created a Lenten promise that you want to give to the Lord, well, start today. I'm going to give this over to the Lord. Because it's clear that the Lord continues to bless the apostles in that same light. If you read Matthew's gospel, it's interesting because the Lord is pretty stern with the apostles. He calls them men of little faith. I think 3 or 4 times in a row. We're right now in the Transfiguration, which is a beautiful opportunity where Christ reveals his glory before he goes to the cross. But just the chapter before, Peter was rebuking Jesus when he said he was going to suffer and die. Jesus had to rebuke Peter and say, get behind me, right? Peter, who's supposed to be our rock, is the one that's actually experiencing the most being called out of his failures. And of course, we know at the time of the Passion, leading up to the Passion, he denies our Lord 3 times. In a way, the Lord never stops calling. Isn't it beautiful from the stories of Abraham to the stories of the apostles? The Lord never abandons his people. The Lord never abandons you or me. And so I just encourage you, maybe in this season of Lent, one of hope and one of turning back to the Lord, even in the midst of our failures. Because what does the Lord really want us to do? To get back up and follow him. In the bulletin, I quoted Pope St. John Paul II. He said the difference between the sinner and a saint is the saint gets back up. And so my hope for you in the season of Lent is never to fall into disappointment or despair, but always turn back to the Lord.